Whoa, that's a strong title, isn't it? First things first, just letting you know that I'm just an idiot with a microphone and a silly thought. So with that clarified, let's jump right into the topic. Epic is an epic musical written by Jorge Rivera-Herrans, depicting in a very cool way the story of the Odyssey. And of course, translating it into a musical format, there had to be some changes to the story. However, in my opinion, the biggest missed opportunity of Epic was a decision that Jorge made in the beginning, but later on changed, and that is the fight between Odysseus and Telemachus versus Antonius. I understand why he took it out of the musical, wanting to make Odysseus the final boss and the fight between his good side and evil side. However, I do agree that the way that Jorge wanted the fight to go down, yeah, I don't think it was the best approach. Personally, I think the fight could have helped explore the themes that Jorge wanted to, but the fight itself would have needed to change. It could have stayed that spectacular one that was planned, instead making it more intimate, more quiet, if you will. And here are my main 3 points on it. This is a very quick and simple point. The transition between this,
all of you are going to die,
to this,
all my life I'd have died to meet you,
was a little bit jarring, at least for me. I imagine that most people didn't even notice it, especially because I Can't Help But Wonder is a very emotional song. But I believe that the fight would have been a good transition between the brutality and the darkness of Odysseus to the tenderness of I Can't Help But Wonder. Before getting into the themes of the fight and Antonius, we need to talk about another character. We know him, we love him, and his name is Polyphemus! Yeah! Now, what does Polyphemus represent for Odysseus' character? Simple. He represents Odysseus' mercy, his desire for a better future, and his wish to find the least violent path to a resolution. Basically, he's Odysseus' dwarf side.
本当に真剣に話し合いで解決する努力をしたのかよ。
We all remember what happens to him, don't we?
Captain.
Enough! His death is not only to show us that having mercy in the world of Epic is dangerous, but also representing the death of Odysseus' mercy and the beginning of his transformation. Now, let's talk about Antonius. If I were to ask you which character is the complete opposite to Antonius, your gut answer might be Eurylochus. And it makes sense, right? Eurylochus' instrument is the voices of the crew, while Antonius' is the voices of the suitors. Odysseus cares about his crew and he really hates the suitors, and both of them are obstacles that Odysseus has to overcome to get back to his family. However, I think a more fitting answer is Polyphemus, and like Polyphemus, I believe that Antonius should have an equal amount of importance to Odysseus' character. Because, in my mind, by killing Antonius first, they are showing that he's a worse monster than Antonius, which I'm sure it's not something we want. Because in the song Odysseus, we see him finally embrace the ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves and the be dangerous mentality. This song is supposed to show us Odysseus at his darkest moment. But I don't think anybody sees it that way, and I understand it, because the suitors totally deserve what they got. However, I think it's important to keep that darkness alive, and I think there's 2 ways to do it. One option would be to make half of the suitors not as bad. Maybe they wish to be the king simply because of Ithaca's stability or a foreign enemy that is ready to attack them. Or second, you put the fight with Antonius. And not only that, but you show him defeating Odysseus in a way showing that if Odysseus allows all this darkness and hatred in his heart, he will become a monster just like Antonius. And I know what some of you might be thinking, Odysseus defeated a god, how he would lose to Antonius? Exactly. Odysseus has been sailing for days, fighting all sorts of creatures, fighting the Caribbean monster, and then defeating Poseidon, and by this point, killing 100 men. You know, he might be tired. And in the next point, I'll explain how I see the fight going down. And this is the second aspect of the fight, putting Telemachus in the spotlight, showing us his growth as a warrior, bringing a much nicer ending to his line in Legendary.
If I fight this monster, is it you I'll find?
And also showing that as long as Odysseus has his family, he will never turn into a monster like Antonius. Lastly, the sun will have to change back from Odysseus to king, because it would be a fight between kings. You know, the current king Odysseus, the future king Telemachus, and the usurper king Antonius. Now, in this last part, I will tell you how I think the fight could have played out. Heads up, I am not a composer, and as you have seen, I'm barely an artist, so yeah. I will basically just tell how I think could have been structured. So, the first thing we have to do is a little bit controversial. Because Antonius needs to leave. I know. But yeah, he has to leave so the fight happens. Maybe arrow, instead of going through his neck, it grazes him, and we hear him like stomping away into the darkness as Odysseus says,
I have had enough.
During the parts when we hear we will also hear a sound effect similar to a whoosh. This sound effect is there to tell us that Antonius is alive and is using the darkness and the bodies of his brothers to stay alive. The sound will play out like we know it until Odysseus says either this,
All of you are going to die!
or this.
All of you who have done me wrong, this will be your fate!
In neither case, we will hear Odysseus shooting arrows to the suitors and the suitors screaming in pain and dying. But then, we'll hear arrows landing into a guy, but not scream. We will hear footsteps, then a shove, a hack and a slash and a grunt. From there we have two options. Either they go straight into the fight, or we have Odysseus singing something along the lines of, oh, I left you here to protect my family and this is how you betray me, implying maybe a deeper connection. Not like, oh, we were friends, but you know, like, oh, you were a trusted commander or something like that. And of course, name dropping Antonius. Antonius answers with something like, 100 men. 100 men were under my command. And now I have one goal in mind. You know, to start showing the similarities between Odysseus and Antonius. And then they go to blows. We hear the exchange of swords, and Antonius will sing. He will sing 3 times, trying to get into Odysseus' head. And in between each verse, we will hear this. And the first verse that Antonius sings will be about Ithaca, about how prosperous it has become ever since the suitors have brought gifts to Penelope, and about how safe it is thanks to the protection of the suitors. This doesn't seem to get Odie, and we hear him attacking Antonius again. Now, the next 2 verses can go either way, but I'm gonna go with the version that makes this scene more intense. So, the second verse will be about Penelope. Antonius will say that he also remembers Odysseus, about his kindness and how that was what won Penelope's heart. But now, Odysseus killed 100 men, so they now share a face of a killer. And if Penelope hates Antonius' face, would she still love his face? That seems to get Odysseus, and Antonius is able to avoid his attacks more easily. And the last verse will be about Telemachus, basically saying that Odysseus wasn't there for his son, unlike Antonius, that Antonius was the one that taught him about the realities of the world, aka this line in Little Wolf.
This cruel world doesn't give out presents just for being good.
And that he was the one who taught him how to fight. And just to bury that dagger deeper into Odysseus, he will sing something along the lines of, "He is more my boy than yours." And that is what breaks Odysseus. We hear him scream and try to attack Antonius, but Antonius being able to disarm him and kick him into the ground. Something that I want to point out about all of this is that Antonius is lying. We know that Ithaca isn't doing that well to the line that Odysseus sang in Odysseus.
Can't find my palace, desecrated, sacked like Troy.
We know that Penelope and Telemachus yearn for Odysseus to return home. That Penelope wants to be back at his side, and Telemachus desperately wants to know his father. Odysseus doesn't know that by this point of the story. He can just assume they do, and that's why Antonius' lies are effective.
Get away from me!
And that's when Telemachus jumps into the fight. Important. He doesn't acknowledge Odysseus. He doesn't call him father or talk to him at all, because this is a confrontation now between Telemachus and Antonius. I have this funny idea that Telemachus could say something along these lines.
No! You don't touch that!
Man,
You don't touch anybody! I've got...
my mom.
I'm trying to protect it here too. You wanna get violent, you old fuck? Well, come on! You better have a plan to kill me though, because it's me before anyone else in here!
And they get into the fight. Maybe there are another 3 verses, a back and forward between Telemachus and Antonius, until we hear Telemachus defeat him. In my head, Antonius is doing a Ganondorf, maybe trying to reach to Telemachus' neck to kill him, and then we hear, finally bringing an end to the threat of the suitors. In that moment, both Telemachus and Odysseus are breathing heavily, maybe looking at each other. Odysseus still has all the lies that Antonius told him in his mind, so he looks away, sets the bow down, and walks away. Wait! And yeah, that's about it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe and all that good jazz. And I'll see you next time. Have a good day. Sayonara.